Hello, everybody. Welcome to this week's editions of Biology from the Basement, where you're teaching the class. If you can see here, Sydney and Morgan have worms. Anyways, I will do a series here where I'm going to present all of the slideshows that have come into me, and you will follow along on your spreadsheet. I have my laptop over here to make sure that we cover everything. So we'll go through these one by one. We'll start with the worms. So go down to the row that represents worms. Okay, here's your classification. Right, this is more for my benefit in the grading part, but it does help to give you an idea that worms are part of the animal kingdom. Now they are going to follow the annelids or earthworms. There are other phyla like roundworms and flatworms, but they are very different than the segmented worm, which is a little bit more complex. So we're going to use that one as kind of our example as we go through. So here are some answers. Cold-blooded, multicellular, invertebrates, no skeleton, right? You can practically use these words to define them as well as just describe them. And don't forget to fill in those squares. All right, nutrition and habitat, that one's for me, right? They eat all kinds of stuff, living or dead. Many worms in the other phyla are parasitic, not just the tapeworm. But yeah, they even eat feces, aka poop, and they can be found anywhere. Usually they have to be found in some type of moist environment, because as you'll see how they get their nutrients, moisture is important. Right, so here are the three subgroups of worms, or really the phyla of worms. A worm is anything that just has a long cylindrical body. And so flatworms are those ones that have like the two eye spots. You may have seen them before. Roundworms are the really scary ones. The nematodes are all parasitic, not just parasitic to humans and other animals, but even parasitic to the soil and the plants that live there. So they can do all kinds of damage to all kinds of species on the parasitic level. But we're going to focus on the segmented worms called annelids. So what kind of adaptations do they have, right? You have to list adaptations for me. The big ones are their setae, as that word is pronounced. They're the little hairy bristles that actually give them some kind of friction to move along through the soil. That's probably one of their number one adaptations. Of course, they have muscles in each segment to work with those to get to get themselves around. All right, nervous system. They have a very simple brain. It's something called a fused ganglion, which is just a whole bunch of nerves that are kind of overlapping that make basic decisions, not unlike your spinal cord actually making decisions. So that is a simple brain. They have nerves. Their senses here, right? Some can detect light, vibration. They can detect chemicals, which we would call taste. Their circulatory system is closed, meaning it travels in tubes or blood vessels, and they have what are called aortic arches. The average earthworm has 5 aortic arches that pump blood throughout that long body. Their digestive system, we will call it continuous. These are some simple animals, so as you can see, they have structures that sound familiar, but not as developed as us mammals closer to the top. Respiratory system, no lungs, no gills. They breathe through their skin, right? Good old diffusion of oxygen through their skin, hence why they must be kept in that moist environment. Here's another addition to your sensory organs, right? That, like I said, they have chemoreceptors where they can detect chemicals, which we call taste and smell. We'll talk more about that when we get to our senses in the human body. Reproduction, external fertilization, and they are egg layers. They do not nourish with milk, and they do not care for their young. Worms are both boys and girls, meaning they are hermaphrodites. They have both male and female parts, though they do not reproduce with themselves. They usually find another earthworm, and one decides who's the male and who's the female, and they actually do reproduce sexually, even though they are hermaphroditic. Another fun fact for you. All right, so here is your earthworm inside and out, right? You can see those 5 aortic arches that work as a pretty cool heart. They have their blood vessels traveling over the dorsal side and the ventral side. One of the other neat things is before the invention of the spinal cord, they had a ventral nerve cord running down the underside of their body where it was much more protected. Right? Having a spinal cord with a backbone around it is a great adaptation. And when you don't have that kind of protection, you keep your nerves on your belly. So, good job, Sydney and Morgan, on teaching us about the worm. I think we filled in all of the squares on our slideshow. If we didn't, let me know, and I will post any answers that are needed. But that's what this is going to look like, and we'll keep going from here. All right, we'll check in a minute.